Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Dimitri, Stefan, and myself will now walk you through the updates and new features in automation and customization in HyperMesh 2025.1. What did we prepare for you? So we'll start with showing you how you can now use Compose as a debugger. We'll then proceed to HyperMesh client updates on the Python side, so namely Python APIs and recording. Afterwards, I will hand it over to Stefan, who will show us all the updates on HyperView side, and I think he might have a bit on HyperGraph as well. Dimitri will follow up with the report module, Python API updates, and I will then wrap up the session with with general updates. Compose as a debugger, first topic. Compose has been around for a while, and it's a well-established mathematical modeling tool. It uses the open matrix language. I'm sure many of you have interacted with it and used it. Apart from the modeling and also plotting capabilities, it has its debugging infrastructure and mechanisms. So you can use it as an IDE. And we decided to take full advantage of it and bring in a coupling setup where you can link a Compose instance to your HyperMesh instance and use it as your script debugger, as your script editor. In other words, as an integrated development environment. So what this brings us is you can create and edit your scripts. So before or until now, let's say, you were able to run your scripts mostly through the console. When you were debugging, typically you would look at the console outputs, you would use print statements, but it required a bit more, let's say, manual approach. With Compose, you can now interactively create, edit those scripts in a nice environment, and most importantly, you can execute those scripts directly from there. Last but not least, you can debug your code. So you can look at your variables, you can look at the call stack, and of course, you can create breakpoints in your code. So all these things are coming in 2025.1. What I'll do, I'll show you very quickly how this feels and looks. And with that, we'll switch to a HyperMesh session. You might be familiar with the developer ribbon already. If not, it is by default turned off. You can enable it through the ribbons menu here. And then in version 2025.1, you'll be greeted with three functionalities in the HyperMesh client. The tasks, bringing you the task manager, Python recording, and now also the debugger. I'll launch it, and while it's opening and establishing the coupling, we can have a quick look at the two icons. So as a user, you'll have an option to either launch an empty session, or in other words, session that will remember what has been opened before, or with the little satellite icon here, open folder file, you can open an existing script. So if you already have a code, you want to debug, you can go straight there as well. As a very, very quick taster, what I've got here is a script that will load the model, load result files, plot some contour plot, namely stress in this case, and then we'll query values of elements inside set 4 and then print them as a list. To test a few things, let's create a breakpoint here and maybe one at the variant of the code. Right. Once you're happy with the debug setup, you can hit start and things will start happening. So now we're hitting the first breakpoint and we can start stepping over. So the second we step over, we've got now the contour plot plotted, and I can proceed further. So now we're going to define the set4 object. And by the way, as soon as you have these variables defined, if I hover above each, I will get some useful info about it. This tooltip shows me the string representation of this object, and I can learn a bit more. What we've done on the HyperMesh Python side by default is that we show you, if I hover above it again, we show you the class of the entity and the ID in HyperMesh. If you have something more complex, so more complex variable or data structure, what you can also do is use the watch tab here. What I will do here very, very quickly is just jump all the way to the last breakpoint on the print statement. Okay. And while we're here, let's have a look at, let's say, set4 elements, which is a list of elements inside our set4. All right. So I can put it in my watch list, and then I can see everything that's inside the list. So as a scripter, I can then verify that, okay, my variables are correctly defined. And more importantly, the final data that we're asking for. So if I ask for data variable, again, I can check the content. I can see, all right, I've got all the data there. In this case, we were looking at the entity ID and the entity result value. So I can see the list of lists. Everything looks okay. So I'm happy. I can proceed with my script. Right, I'll just click start again to carry on running, and then we've got the printed content in the console. So this is how you can then work with your scripts inside HyperMesh. I'm in the application. In terms of the clients, you can link it to any clients really that have Python API. So we are currently exposing the developer ribbon in HyperMesh, HyperView, HyperGraph, and TableView client. So from all those places, you can launch your compose session and start debugging, stepping through, use breakpoints, etc., all the goodies. So I certainly hope that you will enjoy this. One requirement to mention, you will need to install Compose, of course. Okay. If it is installed in the same area as your HyperMesh, we'll pick up that installation automatically. If for whichever reason it lives in a different folder, then you can set up an environment variable and link those two applications together. Next chapter I will cover here for you is HyperMesh Python API and the updates on the Python recording. So 2025.1 brings a few, we hope, exciting features for you. We're starting with 2 on this slide, which is exposed as 2 new columns in the GUI. First of all, you might be familiar, if you're recording something, you of course get the explicit definition of your selections, which is not always the same selection as you want to use later on, right? So using this checkbox, you can replace the explicit entity selection definition, such as collections, entity lists, or entity objects definition with an interactive selection. So the user, without having to go and modify the code manually, they can simply substitute the explicit definitions with entity selections. And the second similar feature, sort of, but again, in terms of substituting, if you have any variables in your code, any arguments that you want to link to a parameter entity inside your model, you can do so now. So instead of creating variables simply inside the sort of recording world, you can link it now to a parameter entity. And again, the code is generated, as you can see in the screenshot here. We'll be linking the parameter object and asking for its value. So this has nice benefits if you're using your HyperMesh model, let's say for a hyperstudy optimization session, where we automatically read and expose the parameters. So user, although, if you're not familiar with scripting or you're not directly the owner of the script, you can control the behavior of the code through a parameter entity inside your HyperMesh model. Another big feature that we introduced is the ability to generate your code as a pulse task. So here, if you choose pulse task as the code destination, what we're doing, we're generating a few things behind the scenes, the code file, the Python file, and a JSON file defining the task parameters. And then we are calling pulse behind the scenes and generating a task, pushing it directly to the library, opening pulse for you, so you can see straight away that the task is there. You can check its definition. We're using the function name as the name of the task, and we are also exposing all the input arguments of your recorded function as input arguments for your pulse task. Few improvements have touched also the mechanism that captures the selection logic. This is something that has been supported in the first release 2025 in general in the context, but now we're bringing the support also to the selector inside Entity Editor. Here we've got a quick example on how we select elements inside the set, for example, here. So we've got the entity selector, and the logic here used was we selected elements of component ID 2. You can see instead of having just the explicit list of element IDs, we are again capturing the logic, creating a component selection first, and then deriving the element selection from there. On top of that, we are also now capturing the logic when the user is selecting elements by reverse, adjacent, or by attached. So all these options here are now captured in the code, and on this little screenshot here, the snippet, you can see how it looks, for example, for the adjacent option. Right? There's a few more things that we're bringing in, sort of smaller scale, but we hope something that you will enjoy and find beneficial. Many of these are also exposed through the settings, so you can control them, switch them on and off as you prefer. We are now adding a header comment to the generated code where we mentioned the date, time, username, also if a model file has been used, and also HyperMesh version, solver interface, a couple of things that you can then use for tracking. Function name is configurable. That's something that before was hard-coded, and we also changed the default name so it doesn't clash with the run magic command in the console. So the default name now is main. The options are stored within the HyperMesh session. Before, every time you got back to recording, the options here were defaulted back to what they were originally. Now we're keeping them, and they are sort of reset only upon restarting the whole HyperMesh application. Entity lists, if we are capturing them in the code, you as a user can choose to define them through list comprehension. This makes the code more readable. It's a bit easier for the user, and also easier to sort of understand which entities were captured, because we've got the list of IDs sort of nicely displayed ID by ID, rather than having a list of the constructor statements. We have moved the model object definition outside of the main function for various reasons, but mostly it gives you more flexibility. You can then reference the model object in the function signature as well if you want. So it should bring some nice benefits to the user. At the bottom, we are now adding automatically the standard Python idiom, which means that if user copy pastes the code, they can automatically just run it. This is done only in situations where either we have no arguments or all the arguments have a default value. In other words, user doesn't have to specify them. Otherwise, it would result in an error. So this is automatically recognized, and the statement is used only if valid. And last thing to mention on this slide, improved a bit of usability here. If you are looking at the list of values or the value section of each and every argument, some of these can be quite long, right? The information that is defined in the arguments could be very wide, and just to make life a bit easier, if user has stopped inspecting the content, they can then right-click at the column level and reset the column width, so it's shrunk back to its default. So that's all from the Python decoding, and now very quickly on Python API itself. So with every version, we are bringing more improvements in terms of entity attribute support. This is an ongoing effort, and we're promising you that with every version, more and more attributes will be supported. So we carry on doing that. Filter by attributes has been significantly improved in terms of which attributes are supported. Before, the selection was a bit limited. Now pretty much all string, integer, and float attributes can be used as criteria for creating collection of entities. We're hoping that this is going to be a big hit. On a collection, you've got now access to a new method, getValues. We previously had a method called setItems, which allowed you to define an attribute value across all your entities in the collection. To keep things in sync, we have renamed that method to setValues, and now the getValues allows you to query these attribute values, which means that you don't have to loop over your collection. You can ask for all the data from it, in other words, the attribute value for all the entities inside, and it will be returned either as a NumPy array for numerical attributes or for string values as a flat Python list. Last but not least, we are now supporting definition of parameters on entity attributes in Python API. We created 2 new dedicated methods that are available on your model class / model object, and that is parameterized by collection and parameterized by entity for a single entity. So I hope that you will enjoy all these things in 2025.1. With this, I will now hand it over to Stefan to walk you through the updates on the post side.
Perfect. Thanks. My name is Stefan Eberhard, and I'll show you the news from the post side. Let's start with the HyperView Python API. In 2025, for HyperView, for the animation client, we covered the following classes already a lot. In 2025.1, we improved the 3D export tools here, also for HWC coverage. Then we added for the page and window classes, especially for animation window, new options. They will be mentioned later. And also interactive selection has been drastically improved. And also the apply style, completely new class. It was on top of the list from users to support this. I will start here with the apply style. The new apply style class is now available. It covers all the features of the apply GUI. It's very simple to start. If you want to do it in one line, just with default settings, apply style and apply immediately, and then you will get from current window to all the windows in the page done. We can define the source, also a non-active animation window here. Then as targets, we can have the current page, all pages, or a list of pages and windows, so it as objects. Please be aware that we have here a singleton. This apply style, that means when you use it and later open the GUI, the checkbox will set according how you have used it in your script. So quick, before I go to a live demo here, how this looks like for source and target. So here in this one, the source is a non-active window you see on the upper right. And the target is a list of objects, of pages and windows. And then when you apply, you will get the following. So here I imported the classes. I have here my session. As you've seen here, and the first one, scalar vector tensor, and some entities, nodes, and the other pages of these three look different. When I start first with the first example quickly, I do create the apply style object, set all attributes to default, and hit apply, and you will see it's on the active page. The other pages are not affected. I reload my session. Use now the apply style where I set the end attributes. I set everything to false. This is like in the GUI. And then set just the contour, the scalar true, and the orientation, the rest stays the same, and apply it to all the pages. And you will see it's just the orientation and that everything is now stressed von Mises. The rest stays on for all the pages. Reload my session. And the last live demo is now the one with the classes. Here you will see I have here this active page, but this is my source, page 1, window 4, and then I've applied to this one, to this window 3, and then on the second page on the last window and the full last page. And the attributes, I take all attributes, so true, and you will see from the fourth window to the third, here to the last, and the last page, everything. So that's very nice, powerful, and you can do everything even more than the GUI because you can have source non-active pages. So let's continue with the interactive selection, and here we have TCL. So that was, we have now an in TCL selection context. For this one, you will load the package, the post query package here. This is also nicely documented, as you see here on the right side. It mirrors exactly the interactive selection which we have in 2025.0, the Python interactive selection class. We support hyphen options, so all flexible, full flexibility there. And this replaces this complex legacy TCL selection script, which maybe many of you are aware of. And we support part, nodes, and elements. And we can also design what will be returned, if it's a list or a selection set. And we have also support the different modes, single, list, and window selection. How does it look in detail? So the entity types here are with the n minus hyphen options. I can say modal if the GUI is completely blocked or if I'm allowed to use the browsers and other GUIs during. When the selection set label is set, then a set basically is created permanently. Then I also can control the message which I want to show when I start. So when the context comes up before the first selection, you see here the messages in the message box. If for multiple selection, I have window selection and advanced selection. I can have lists, sorted lists, or single selection. And as return type, as I see, if I want a selection set, if I have a huge list, that's obviously much faster to handle then. Or by default is the return type list. I have to go here and obviously I have to do the package require. And when I use the commands here, then it starts and I click with defaults and I got the list. I made a little function which shows more output than just the list, so that it gives here a little. So for the next quick demo, so here I use the interactive selection of type element multiple that I can do a window selection. I will create set label. If I provided a selection set should be created. And the message here on the lower is defined, select elements, and as return type, I want to get the set. You see, I get here, I can select the whole bunch, 16,000 elements. And when I confirm, my set is created and I see 16,000 elements, the set with the label, everything. Super easy to use. And the last quick, for example, if I want to have a dedicated list, I can here type element list. If I fire this one up, I can now, with a control key, select the list, smaller, let's see, and I fire it up, and you see the list is sorted exactly in the order and returned here from this one. Then other one, what we for HWC, we have also the export. It was introduced in Python, but now it was a huge demand that we can also just simply record it. So it's supported in the save model commands. We had save model H3D. Now we will have save model H3D in HTML, save model H3D in PPT, GLB in PPT, and just only the GLB object. As you have to know, we have here no defaults. The defaults is what last time is selected because this is a singleton, so the selection option changed via the GUI settings. So if we record everything which is available for this option, so that when you replay the command, that it's completely set, So we will have here also GLB export. We can type here the save model. It has here only the results as an option, or PPT, or if you set the GLB as model, then you have model hierarchy, results, and animation available. I simply export here the H3D. The other one works exactly the same. File, export. So export 3D model, I go to HTML and H3D, keep all the options, say export, and run it. And you see model is created and it immediately pops up and in my default browser, as I said. So now I want to do it again. It's recorded. If I want to do it again and say test 2, it replays exactly the same. Obviously, then it will not be pushed to the browser. So when I look at my here, test was exported and here exactly the same, test 2. So everything works as expected. Good. So the same functionality also for the other 3 options. Additional Python features here are node and measure lists. So here, if I'm on the animation, I want to get a list of the measures and all the different types. It could be tedious but with the get now, you just click it. Also the same for nodes. The syntax is get measures, get nodes on the window object. In addition, we support now the HyperView legend of categories, of type category. So we can set the style to category and then set the category label, etc., and the values and level color. So that was it for HyperView. For HyperGraph, we have just a minor enhancement, but which is super powerful. So we also can get the node datums and axis lists. So all the entities basically. It's on the class of type of the window of the plot type XY method to get all these entities. The syntax is get curves XY or get curves bar, complex, polar, as you see here. And it's also for nodes. For the type argument to filter for horizontal and data, we can just pre-filter if we want to just get the horizontal or vertical ones. And the same for the datums. Why is this feature so powerful? Even if it's, I quickly show here, I have a bunch of entities. I now have to create the session object again because I load, so my previous window pointer is no longer valid. And now I can simply win.get curves, XY, I can get curves or nodes. Yeah. So, but if I want to modify, imagine you apply a standard report template or so, and you just want to modify. So here, a simple example, I just go over the curves and decide if the maximum is bigger, the Y attribute, the Y maximum is bigger than 2000. I change the lane color to red. If not, make it grayed out and set it to dashed, and then update the window, and you will see, bump, one little click and you got it. So you can have super easy a statement which runs and modifies your session very easily. So that was it from my side. And now I hand over to Dimitri.
As the post team showed 2 weeks ago on the post GTA about the reporting, now we will elaborate more on the APIs that our developers brought for the report package. So the big hit, as we will talk as in GTA post we talked about, it's the HTML export option that we now got. The HTML export option is very easy to be executed actually, because we use all the APIs that were introduced in the previous releases as for 25.0, and only changing only one API, the export API, which is the save as HTML now, we can have our new report, our new HTML report, and we can have document-based and presentation-based reports, except the APIs that we have from the previous releases that we can use unchanged. We can use them without having nothing to change, without having nothing changed. We have some new APIs specifically for HTML. In case of tables, we can have we can have some APIs that permit us to filter, to coloring the rows, the tables, to changing the width of the tables, to auto sort, and also we can have our custom template for HTML. And of course, for each chapter or slide, we can have our CSS class, our CSS style. Let me go very quickly to a quick demo. This demo is actually the 6th example that you will find in the current documentation, with the only change, as I told you, the export option, the export API. As you see, this is an HTML report with a table, the tooltip. We have here a combo box filter type. It gives the HTML option gives very powerful report options. Another big hit for the Python API regarding a report is the ability to have the capability of having paragraph objects. Now the text can be wrapped up into paragraphs. By paragraph, we may mean a bullet or a number. And each paragraph can have its different formatted text, which is basically a run object. And we can have underlined text, color text with different alignments, etc. Another big hit, it's the ability of capturing images or models directly from the GUI by only using actually two APIs. The first API is the format API, where we can set the type of the file that we want, if it will be H3D or GLB, and we want to capture from the GUI, actually. And the other API is the update API, which recaptures, actually, actually recaptures from the GUI every images that we want. As you saw in the video, we have actually an HTML which we capture many different formats like MP4, H3D, or GLB. Another very powerful API that comes from legacy. It's the resolution, which we can set it for the whole presentation or document, and we can set the resolution or the custom or predefined one in order to capture our images. Another new class that you'll find is the table cell. This class, the objects of this class can be accessed using the cell method in table and doctable classes. And using this, we can access specifically the cells that we're interested in a table and modify them, put some font or background color, or even a hyperlink or an image. And some also additional enhancements. It's the crop that comes from the legacy report, and it can be used for cropping images when we capture it from the GUI, or when, in terms of API, the source is equal to graphic. Then we support also the alignment, as we supported for 25.0 in text. We support the alignment in image objects, as well in table objects. And also for the table, we can set the export range by defining one table by defining the rows, columns that we want to be exported, and many other APIs that you will find useful in our new documentation. And now I pass it to Mikhail.
First news we wanted to mention is on Task Manager side. Together with adding the developer ribbon to multiple other clients, we have added access point to Task Manager to HyperView, HyperGraph, and TableView. So from all these clients, including HyperMesh, of course, you can now access the Task Manager. On top of that, we have introduced new selector widgets for HyperMesh and for HyperView as well. These are, of course, built on top of our Python API. And the second news we wanted to share from the connectors team, big shout out for introducing these features, namely the support of TCL and Python customization for attachments, the ability to create and define a Python custom script on top of connectors, and also the many updates with respect to the previous infrastructure. So historically, many information connectors were accessible through query commands or HM underscore commands, as we know them. Today, you can access that information through data names, which means that through Python API, you have access to them as entity attributes. So once you have the connector object, you can straight away on that object query a lot of useful information. And yeah, with this, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed all the things that we prepared for you.